morning, everybody. If you're new to my live stream, it's one of the most boring on the internet, but you've arrived here anyway, so maybe you're having a quiet night in as well. So, I have to work on this art piece, so I'm going to be sitting here working on this art piece. In the meantime, you can get some housework done, or maybe start that book you wanted, or just nothing. I'm going to start drawing now. And I hope you guys have a good night. Check in, see how I'm doing. I got 2 of these on the run. I know I should add some more paint and fill in the splotches, but I'm going to see how it looks with the black and then go from there. Using a black Sharpie wheel-based paint marker because I'm not painting all those fucking lines again. Alright, we'll do cell theory.
How good do you think your teeth really are? Let's try the tissue test. Ugh, still yellow. Whitening toothpaste can only do so much. There's toothpaste white and there's Crest 3D White Strips White. They whiten like a $300 professional treatment. So much whiter. Crest.
Oh, I hate commercials.
Does sunscreen SPF actually matter? Bother me up, boys. Number 2. Not even did the worst. Nothing is consistent.
You're right, nothing is consistent. At least in your experiment. You see, that right there is the problem. The problem that I'm gonna solve today. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Style Theory, the show that quite literally is putting skin on the line in the name of science. As we start to wind down the summer months, people are flocking to the beaches, the pools, their backyards to capture every last bit of the sun's rays before we all return to the eternal twilight that is fall and winter. Of course, if you're going to be out in the sun to try and catch the last remnants of vitamin D, you're best suited to lather on some sunscreen to prevent roasting like a lobster, right? Well, not everyone thinks so. I'm sure we all have at least one person in our life who just doesn't believe in sunscreen. My mom, for instance, famously doesn't think that sunscreen works, and her upgrade to an SPF 8 was a huge moment in her character arc. But she's certainly not alone in thinking that. According to one study, 11% of Americans wear sunscreen every day, but a whopping 46% never wear sunscreen at all. Of course, making your own choice to not wear sunscreen is one thing, but it becomes entirely different when you start telling others to follow your lead.
If you're wearing sunscreen, you're literally putting chemicals all over your body and then laying in the sun.
This is why I stopped wearing sunscreen. Because if I put a bunch of chemicals into my skin and then I lay out into the sun, it's like baking chemicals into my skin.
Can I just say that I love the fact that she says this in front of a pool full of chlorine, a chemical compound which helps keep the water behind her clean. You know, H2O, another chemical compound. But all joking aside, I kind of get where they're coming from. Looking across these videos, the overwhelming complaint stems from the large quantity of hard-to-pronounce chemicals that are put into our sunscreens that are foreign to the average consumer, specifically octoprilene and avobenzone. Here's the thing though, both of those have been approved for use by both the FDA and the European Commission as being safe to use. In addition, while a recent study did find that there is some absorption of these and other sunscreen ingredients into the bloodstream after application, the study also directly pointed out, and I quote, "These findings do not indicate that individuals should refrain from the use of sunscreen." No, the real threat that sunscreen seems to pose is less directed at us and more at marine wildlife. According to the National Park Service, 14,000 tons of sunscreen enter coral reefs every year. Coral reefs are super important to the health of marine organisms, often serving as the literal home for hundreds of aquatic friendos. They don't call coral reefs the rainforests of the ocean for nothing. There's now an outcry from environmental sciences that some of the ingredients in sunscreen are damaging the already fragile ecosystem. The concern for coral has actually become so widespread that the state of Hawaii began banning sunscreen that contained the chemicals linked to coral damage. As a result, sunscreen manufacturers are rushing to try and find alternatives that are compliant with regulations, using more natural minerals like zinc oxide. So on one hand, we have science telling us that sunscreen use is both safe and necessary for our bodies, but at the same time, we have evidence that suggests that it might be damaging our aquatic ecosystems. And then you have the whole other crew of people saying that they use natural solutions instead.
I never use cancer cream. Whenever I'm in the sun, I use organic coconut oil to hydrate my skin.
And then all of that came to a head when I saw that video from the Cold Open from Tyler Blanchard, one of Eric's crew, looking at different SPFs of sunscreen. And the results were saying that sunscreen just doesn't work, or to question your sunscreen, or to doubt what it's doing. And usually I really like Tyler's videos. He's one of Eric's crew, and I think all of those guys are doing some of the coolest work in the space right now. But I gotta say, the sunscreen sunscreens were all different, and I just started to internally scream as I saw that experimental design going super viral. Hence this video. Do sunscreens actually work? Are there safer alternatives? Do the online hacks work? Does SPF matter? I wanted to test it all. So we designed, and then redesigned, and then redesigned a third time a scientific experiment that would finally answer all of our questions about sunscreen. And we have the answers. Let me tell you, they are far from the answers that I expected. At first we thought that this one was going to be easy. Just buy a bunch of sunscreen and lay out in the balmy North Carolina sun for 2 hours, exactly like Tyler did for his test. But unlike Tyler, we were a bit more careful about how we chose our sunscreens. To make sure our results were as reliable as possible, we found low, medium, and high SPF in each of 3 different popular consumer brands: Banana Boat, Sunbump, and Neutrogena. We did our best to ensure that the SPFs were consistent across those brands: 35, 50, and 70. We also wanted 2 extremes, an extreme high and an extreme low. That got us a 4 in Hawaiian Tropic and a 100 in Banana Boat. And that's not all. We also wanted to test price point. Would more expensive or fancier brands of sunscreen perform any differently? So we packed the family into the car, cranked up the tunes, and went to the one store we knew we could find overpriced sunscreens with insane markups: Sephora. So we need to acquire some fancy sunscreen to get the true range. We've got some low tier, we've got some mid tier. Now we need some expensive stuff. I believe this makes it our first trip to Sephora for style, which I think makes it official that we are now a beauty and fashion channel. Oh boy, I knew that Sephora was going to have that expensive stuff, but I was not prepared for the insanity that was their pricing logic. This one costs less than this guy right here. It has a higher SPF. It works longer, 80 minutes versus 40 minutes, so double the time.
Yeah, but this is a gel. So there's a high premium put on sunscreens that don't show up on your skin. They don't leave like a white sheen on your face or on your skin so that you can just be dewy. And so this one is a gel, and it's supposed to specifically go on sheer and totally scentless on all skin tones.
Hey, fun fact, turns out you can get away with charging double the price for something that's less protective, but is clear and odorless. Score. We also learned that luxury brands aren't immune from using wacky gimmicks to sell their effectiveness.
It has something called wet force and something called heat force.
Oh man, wet force and heat force. It's like the Power Rangers of sunscreen.
We are definitely paying Power Ranger prices.
We left with a Supergoop 40 and a Shiseido 50. Then to round out our sunscreen set, we wanted to include a mineral formulation, without all the extra chemicals that everyone's so concerned about, to see if that possibly made a difference. And just when you thought it was impossible to rub any more substances into my body, we wanted to test some of the anti-sunscreen hacks.
Whenever I'm in the sun, I use organic coconut oil to hydrate my skin.
We went with the coconut oil.
Absorb impurities and see visible results in just 1 use. Neutrogena.
Coconut oil, but we also tried avocado, because we saw that come up in a lot of internet blogs. And lastly, we tried mayonnaise, for the memes.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
No, Patrick, it's not. But you know what? Maybe it's sunscreen. We're about to find out.
I can feel this is very sweaty back here. I'm glad our team isn't doing
Hello.
this.
Oh.
This
Yeah, that's
is
me.
someone you love, man.
Find someone in your life who will rub a series of sunscreens across your sweaty back.
For the content.
Yeah, for the content. Hashtag life goals. 2 hours of meetings frying in the 100-degree North Carolina sun wound up being much more intense than I realized. Solving FNAF while testing sunscreens. That, my friends, is how you multitask. After dragging my hot, sweaty body into the pool to cool off, avenge me. It was time to analyze our results, and here they are. And in case you need any help deciphering those results, here's a handy diagram to overlay what sunscreens corresponded to what parts of my back. And immediately you can start to see some really interesting trends here. Right? You see it? No, you're not seeing anything? Well, good, because there's apparently nothing to see. I was dumbfounded because scientifically this didn't make any sense. Right there, smack in the middle of my back, we left a control. A patch of skin with no lotion on it, and it went unchanged. A result that makes no sense when you zoom out and see this hot red portion of my back down here that I missed while covering the zone outside the realm of the test with SPF 50. Why? What happened? Well, turns out that my sweaty back wasn't just ruining Stephanie's day, I think it was ruining our experiment as well. My best guess here is that all the sweat on my back might have contaminated the test results, mixing into an unholy soup of lotion that protected my back but ultimately burned the data. But that wasn't all that failed us in the first round. We also realized that there was an issue with the sun. While I stayed perfectly still, the sun moved, which created an even toasting across my back. So we were left with two options. We could scrap this episode and say, oh, we tried, or we could head back to the drawing board, broaden our understanding of sunscreen, and salvage the theory. Looking at the runtime, I think you can tell which option we chose. Also, this is a great time to mention, don't try this at home. Seriously, do not. Leave the exposing yourself to potentially harmful radiation to the professionals or us idiot YouTubers. But that left us with two major problems to solve. How do you control the sun and your own sweat? I'm type A and not even I have that much power. Well, in an effort to not make the same mistakes twice, we decided to change up the experiment a bit. When you can't have the sun come to you, why don't you go to the sun? The suntan city, that is me. Day number 2. Basically what we found was that all my back looked largely the same because the sweat just kind of pulled everything into a suntan lotion soup. We need an even tan across my body. We're going to the tanning bed. The thought process here was that we would be able to get a consistent even tan across every square inch of my body, all while not sweating because the beds are equipped with fans and things designed to keep you warm. The beds are also more time efficient. According to the workers there, 12 minutes in some of these beds is the equivalent to 3 hours of sun exposure. So if we really wanted to test how sunscreen works under extended, intense sun exposure, this was gonna be it. But as I walked into the unfamiliar world of the tanning salon, I realized I might have flown a bit too close to the sun, or more accurately, too close to the light bulbs simulating the sun. Immediately I was asked about what sort of bed I was looking for. They had 4 super options, each labeled by their speed. Fast, faster, fastest, and instant, which literally fry cooks you in 12 minutes. And that's barely an exaggeration. These machines have safety ratings like hopping on the world's deadliest roller coaster.
There it is. Well, there it is.
Each one came with their own different mixture of UVA and UVB light. What? Then there were dozens of tanning enhancers costing hundreds of dollars. It felt like I was dropped into a foreign country where I didn't speak the language. So I panicked. I just blindly picked some stuff. Once I was alone in my tanning room, I whipped out my trusty Game Theory duffel bag, available on theoryware.com, filled with all the lotions and hacks that I needed to finally end this educational but exhausting sunscreen debate. Now all I needed to do was tape up my grid, lotion up, and lie down. I mean, we controlled for everything at this point. What could possibly go wrong? It's activated. I gotta go. Well, unbeknownst to me, I had 5 minutes to prepare myself before the thing fired off. Apparently they don't expect their typical clientele to take an hour bisecting their body with medical tape and then smearing 13 different lotions and 3 separate condiments against their skin. We will be hearing about that on their next Yelp review. In the end, though, what it meant was that, yet again, we had ourselves a bust.
So Matthew's come out, a bronze Adonis.
Oh, certainly not. It caught me completely off guard.
Oh no!
And so I'm taping myself as it ignites. No suntan lotion.
Oh no.
By the time I was in the bed, I had 5 minutes of my 10 minutes left. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, you're not fooling me 3 times. Though we were defeated, we finally had ourselves a plan of attack. This time, my body would be gridded up in advance, with each segment already filled in. Yes, that would mean I mildly smelled of guacamole and pina colada when I spoke to the tanning booth operator the next day, but no, I didn't worry about that, because I'm assuming she's experienced weirder. Also, by pre-naming my lotions, that would give me a chance to absorb my skin for about 10 minutes, something that the back of the bottles recommend in the instructions. Lastly, we decided to expand our range of products to include one of those ultra-expensive lotions that they sell you at the tanning salons. These luxury tanning lotions are designed to get you that crispy butterball on Thanksgiving Day complexion and will run you, get this, $250 a bottle minimum. I decided to go with the sensible route and choose to buy one of the single-use packets without any bronzer inside so as not to affect the results. It was much more affordable at a mere $25 for a single-use packet, nearly as much as all of our Sephora options.
We're getting educated. This is an educational journey for all of us that should have not been this much of a curve.
How hard can it be? Just slather it on and then lay on the sun. This is all showcasing how the TikToks and shorts and videos that have been out there right now probably have not done this accurate, right? Like, I don't think anyone has actually thought about, like, sun position and full exposure and sweat and how long is it soaking in. So I think tomorrow we'll have everything that we need. We'll know everything. We know the different types of UV light, we know the beds, we know the mixes, all of this stuff. So we can finally get definitive evidence about whether or not sunscreen is actually going to do anything. did not expect this one
No,
to
this
be
is-
nearly
I
this
thought
hard.
this was gonna be a really easy one.
So, with our plan set, all I had to do was spend the rest of the day doing as much research as I possibly could about sunscreens, UV light, and tanning beds until I felt comfortable enough to head out for our third and final attempt. You see, the tanning salon really threw me for a loop when they started to talk about the 4 different bed types and how they each had different mixtures of UV light, which made me finally realize, hey, maybe I should have done some more research before jumping into this experiment, which is exactly what I finally did. As you're probably already aware, the sun produces ultraviolet or UV light. This light is invisible to our naked eyes, but it's not invisible to our skin. So when UV light hits your skin, specialized cells called melanocytes release the dark pigment melanin to the rest of your skin cells, giving you that trademark tan color. Of course, how much melanin's in your skin by default leads us to the wide spectrum of skin colors that we see throughout the world, which seems like a good opportunity to acknowledge I am only one person. My skin obviously does not represent even a fraction of the people out there, so let it be known, your results with sunscreen will probably vary a lot. So then, what is sunscreen supposed to do? Well, that ultimately depends on the type. Chemical sunscreens, your typical lotions and sprays, are absorbed into the skin and act as another line of defense to absorb UV light, just like melanin does. On the other hand, mineral sunscreens like zinc oxide sit on top of the skin, acting as a shield, reflecting UV light back into the world before it can penetrate into your skin. In either case, sunscreen gives your melanocytes just enough time to produce the melanin needed to protect your skin from damage. If you forget to apply sunscreen or if you stay out for too long, your skin becomes overwhelmed, and that UV radiation starts to literally destroy your skin cells. The best case scenario for that, the UV light damages the DNA of your cells to such a degree that it just dies. Your immune system then rushes blood and immune cells to the damaged area, causing it to become inflamed and red. You heard that right, the itchiness and redness of a sunburn, it's not caused by the sun literally burning your skin, it's from your own body trying to heal itself. Really puts a different spin on that summer glow, doesn't it? But of course, there are worse options. In very rare instances, instead of the UV light killing the skin cell outright, it instead mutates the skin cell's DNA, turning it to cancer. And all of that is without mentioning the wrinkles, sunspots, and premature aging that come with sun overexposure. So how then does a tanning salon try to mimic all of this? Well, much like how skin types are not all the same, not all UV radiation is the same either. See, the UV radiation that we experience here on Earth from the sun comes in 2 different flavors, UVA and UVB. UVA, which makes up about 95% of the UV light that we take in from the sun, penetrates deeper into the skin. UVA is connected to some types of skin cancer, but is the kind that's most associated with skin aging since it damages the collagen and elastin that keeps your skin tight and perky under the surface. UVB, meanwhile, which makes up the other 5% of the sun's light, is the much more dangerous kind. It mainly impacts the upper layers of your skin, and it's the one most associated with burns and more types of cancers. As a result, sun protection factor, or SPF, that little number on the side of your sunscreen, it only measures how well protects you against UVB rays, not UVA. So you could put on an SPF 100 all day, every day, and that doesn't mean that you're protected at all from the aging and cancerous side effects of UVA. If you want a sunscreen that, protects you against both, look for the phrase broad spectrum on your sunscreen. That way you know it protects against the burning and cancer-causing UVB and the aging and wrinkle-causing UVA. And you see, it's this balance of UVA and UVB that I hadn't really considered when I first got to the tanning salon. With their different bulb makeups all deliver different relative amounts of these 2 lights, with beds ranging from the basic model on a 90-10 UVA to UVB split all the way up to the instant beds with the skin crackling 50-50 split. So for our experiment, I decided to opt for 4 straight days using a mix of their fastest bed, which had a 70-30 divide, and the instant bed with its 50-50. That way we could really get a test of how well these sunscreens reflect back against the most intense versions of these UVB rays. So finally armed with my newfound doctorate in sun protection studies, and after pre-applying our wide range of sun products, I bravely returned to the tanning salon and spent the next several days collecting more data. And I gotta be honest, it felt like I was a baked potato trapped inside some sort of sci-fi stasis tube, with dozens of controls and misters and fans and voice controls that talked to me. What's more, the instant bed was entirely flat acrylic, which meant that my exposed body was just awkwardly lying there. Around some giant human Xerox machine. That said, for as strange and foreign as it was inside my little space tube, the warmth of all the lights was actually really nice and comforting. Honestly, if I didn't know the amount of skin damage that I was actively throwing myself into, and if the machine didn't warn me of my imminent death multiple times on every square inch of the device, this would have been a really pleasant and relaxing experience. Sadly, I did know all those things, so all that relaxation potential was ultimately wasted. Seems like in this case, ignorance might be bliss. Not Not necessarily positive skin health, but at least bliss. What foolishly started as a 2-hour experiment in the end ballooned to a week of tests, 2 failed trials, 4 days laying in a human Xerox machine, and 14 equivalent hours of sun exposure. But finally we had it, and the results were incredibly clear. So before I show you what we discovered, I hope you take a moment to appreciate what we had to do to make sure that you, the viewer, had the information necessary to make informed sunscreen decisions. It's hard for me to tell you what to do, but feels like I deserve a click of that subscribe button. How many other channels in your sub feed are going to subject themselves to high doses of UV radiation in the name of science? I didn't think so. Anyway, without any further delay, let me show you what all the sunscreen and sunlight did to my body. Here are the final results. Alright, so here we are. 3 failed experiments and 5 suntans later. Let's see where we netted out, shall we? This is awkward, me just roping in front of a camera like this. Should we be saving this for the OnlyFans? Only theories? Only theories! Theories that are too hot for YouTube. What is this channel? I love this channel so much, it's so dumb. But it's answering really important life questions, like, hey, the sunscreen worked. So enough of me delaying the inevitable. Let me take off my shirt in front of this camera and in front of my employees. This is great. Here we go.
Oh my.
I love how, like, nasty the tape has gotten after, like, 3 or 4 days of just having it on here. So, I mean, it seems pretty definitive as far as where I'm standing. This is your control right here. Pretty obviously, everything around it, not tan and not red and angry at me. So it says that suntan lotion is clearly doing something. Honestly, I think what I'm most surprised by with this is every square worked, which is shocking to me. This one right here is 7 SPF. Literally nothing. Unchanged. Fantastic. This one right here, this is actually the suntan lotion that we got from Suntan City that is supposed to make you, like, look darker and get the most out of your suntan booth session. Also, unchanged. That's how they get the money out of you, clearly. Everything else, gels, totally fine. The little expensive chapstick worked. Cheap worked. Expensive worked. It all worked. You know what didn't work, though? Any of the TikTok hacks. Mayonnaise, guacamole, little boy in the middle there, that's coconut oil. Yeah, not a It's also worth calling out the fact that, like, hey, some of these were minerals. Most of these had, like, the uncomfortable chemicals that people can't pronounce. They all work fine. But the ones that had minerals that didn't have any of those fancy scientific ingredients, yep, totally fine. Across the board, it seems pretty darn definitive. Sunscreen actually protects your body. It doesn't matter the SPF, it doesn't matter the ingredients, it is there. Don't use mayonnaise. That's dumb. I wasted a week of my life and probably gave myself, like, skin cancer or something to prove to you that sunscreen works. You're welcome, Internet. I'm gonna get this tape off my body. So, what is our big takeaway from this long, arduous experience? It turns out that stuff that we've been rubbing onto our bodies for years and has gone through rigorous experimentation, it does indeed protect your skin from sunburn. It's shocking. I know. Science works. Who would have guessed it? But obviously we learned way more than just that. One, in terms of just pure visual appearance, the expensive brands did not seem to provide any more protection than your typical banana boats of the world. If you have a need or desire to have sunscreen that goes on clear or odorless, then sure, by all means spend extra money, but otherwise, any brand should be doing just fine for you. Secondly, we found that there wasn't a strong correlation to SPF and the tan that we got. Honestly, I expected there to be a bit more of a gradient across my body, with lower SPFs failing and letting in at least some of the rays. I mean, each session in the tanning booth was meant to be the equivalent to 3 hours. I would have expected some of the lower SPF contenders to lose some level of effectiveness over that time, giving us at least some level of tan, but no, we seem totally okay. And even the fancy tanning lotion, not sunscreen, but tanning lotion that Suntan City sold us did an excellent job of protecting our skin, which kind of feels like it defeats the stated purpose of the product a bit. But yeah, they do want you doing it multiple times to get your ideal tan, so maybe this is more of a benefit to their profit line than your tan line. But that said, if you are going to be spending any prolonged time out in the blazing sun, look for a sunscreen that is broad spectrum. That way you're protected against both UVA and UVB rays. And if you're really concerned about how chemicals in sunscreens are affecting your body and or the environment, then it seems like you can absolutely switch to a more mineral-based sunscreen that uses stuff like zinc oxide. They're proven effective both by the FDA and by chest, and they don't get absorbed into your skin. Regardless of the sunscreen though, be sure to read the packaging on your particular brand for how early and often they recommend reapplying the product. They develop those directions so people don't get hurt and they don't get sued. So I'm assuming their instructions are going to give you a pretty safe bet. Finally though, perhaps the biggest takeaway of all of this is not relying on sunscreen alone. You know what protected me the best during this entire experiment? The medical tape between the boxes and my shorts. If you're going to be spending time outside, take advantage of shade, hats, UV protective clothing like rash guards. These will ensure that you're minimizing your exposure as much as possible. And all of those suggestions are supported not only by the doctors, but also by the sunscreen manufacturers themselves. Even the anti-sunscreen crowd behind this one. Good to see that there is something that we all can agree on. Now, if you'll excuse me, the crew needs me. We lost our chessboard a couple weeks back. They were home to use my chess to play. My recent game found that useful to someone. But hey, that's just a
I just want to see him take off the tape.
style theory.
Come on, take off the tape.
Sharp.
You're not going to show it. Ah. Let's see. Sure, we'll try that one. Orange is such a hard color. The white isn't as hard.
Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's full of hot air. It's that time again, folks. Mob Games has come out of its hibernation and finally given us what we've all been clamoring for over a year now. The long-awaited Chapter 3 second trailer. Wait, are you kidding me? Come on, don't get me wrong. I love breaking my frame as much as the next guy.
Are we about to brighten something?
Oh. Are we ever going to brighten something? But it's been, what, 15 months since Chapter 2? I feel like I need to get my poppy fix to complete my indie horror Thanos glove of 2023.
Really? It's been that long?
If this trailer is anything to go by, the newest chapter is going to be incredible. Immediately things feel different here, and it's clear they're leaning hard on the horror.
This very clearly reads of like, hey, this is so starkly different from anything else in this franchise. Very clearly reads as, hey, we sold a movie.
One of the developers was even asked about this in the official Poppy Playtime Discord server, and he said, quote, "It'll still have the same feel as the first two in a lot of respects, but the horror is definitely dialed up." Which, of course, got everyone real excited. And from the creepy images of dead kids to the literal writing on the wall, this trailer is like a toolbox exploding with clues about what this new chapter is about. And I think that I figured it all out months before its release. Not only will we have tortured kids and sinister poppy gas, but we're now being shown more about the monsters they became and the creepy religion they've created. A religion full of sacrifices, rituals, and a leader who's manipulating his congregation into serving him. So strap on your grab packs and hold your breath, loyal theorists. We're heading deep into the cloudy red fog of play care. The repeated theme for this chapter is the use of red gas, so let's get there. In the past theory, I suspected that this gas was made from poppies, a red flower that we know Playtime used in their experiments trying to bring dead rats back to life. It's also in the name of the game, so, you know, not that big of a logical leap. I also pointed out that poppies have been used throughout history as a sleep agent, mainly due to natural opium that's contained in the plant. And that is exactly what we see in the trailer. On the walls of the play care, we find a drawing that shows clouds of red gas with the phrase "time for bed" written underneath. This is the last thing that the child sees before falling asleep under the influence of the gas. Which then leads us to the question, who is our new monster responsible for delivering it? We see some crude child drawings on the wall of a purple creature with red clouds around him, and text all associated with either sleep or nightmares. This then seems to be our gas monster. Sometimes the purple figure is shaped like a bird, other times it's got super long limbs, and sometimes it's just a purple scribble. This has gotten many people on the internet to think that he's a shapeshifter. I disagree. I suspect that this is just the result of sleepy kids not having a clear vision of what this thing actually is as they pass out. Fortunately for us though, we get to see a bit more of this creature. By pausing the trailer on one of the final frames, brightening the image, and then color balancing it a bit, we see that it's got itself a purple paw with 4 sharp claws. That, coupled with the shape of the nose and eye sockets that we see during the final jump scare, as well as the presence of a muzzle right here, reads to me like an old cartoon cat, almost like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. Now, that at first might seem weird. This franchise already has itself 2 other cats in the form of Cat Bee and Candy Cat, so why are they triple dipping? Can't they come up with something new? I suspect that it's because a cat that lures kids to their final sleep is actually a common superstitious belief. One phrase that you sometimes hear tossed around is that cats will steal a baby's breath. For centuries, there have been these urban legends circulated about cats sneaking into cradles at night, causing children to suffocate and die. It's unclear where that whole urban legend started, probably the story of just one parent where it happened to them, but it's thought that the smell could make it come baby's breath, or the crib being a nice warm place to cuddle, or the cat being jealous. Some combination of those things get them to climb into bed, lay across the baby, and deprive them of oxygen. There was even a coroner back in 1791 that came to examine a deceased child and actually stated this urban legend was indeed the cause of death, which only gave more support to the superstition. And that, I suspect, is what our Chapter 3 cat monster is doing. After a fun day at the game station under the watchful eye of Mommy Longlegs, this guy would come in to quote-unquote help the children fall asleep, stealing the breath of children by replacing their air with his poppy sleeping gas. Considering that we've been seeing more and more images of gas masks, this is also something that we're likely going to have to use to protect ourselves. Otherwise, we might begin to hallucinate and have to distinguish between what's real and what isn't, just like the kids' drawings on the wall would suggest. So, what is this
Can you
gas
light
mask?
pink?
Or I suppose if you're following the conventions of the naming system for this game, Gassy Caddy, not the most sinister of names. So, what is Gassy Caddy up to now? Well, the writing is quite literally on the wall in this trailer. It's been busy carving phrases like, I live to serve our angel of salvation, I rejoice in him, wrap us in garlands on the walls. Garlands, by the way, are wreaths of flowers that are often used for Catholic baptisms. So, you might start to see where all this is going.
So are these snake lights? There's no candles today.
Oh yeah, like ritual candles. I've got a lot of religious imagery here. Gassy Caddy is no longer taking on the role of a monster, but instead that of a religious leader. This idea is also exemplified by another carving that we see on the wall, my somniferous flock. This isn't referring to a group of birds, he's being used in the Christian sense. One of the many roles that Jesus is associated with in Christianity is that of a shepherd, one who tends to, feeds, and cares for his flock. The sheep in this scenario are his followers, people that rely on and follow Jesus in their day-to-day lives. Meanwhile, the word somniferous stands out for a few reasons. I've never heard anyone ever use that word in a sentence before. It turns out that in the years since this factory closed, Gassy's been studying up for his SATs. Always.
Oh, I gotta do the gold one too.
Always be learning there, Gassy Caddy, because I'm telling you, I am right there with you. I, too, am a nerd for words.
Somniferous would be what my sleep.
Did I paint that?
Because somnia is sleep.
Turns out
No,
I was
I did
actually
not.
right by assessment there. According to Google,
Yellow
it's not
first.
just being sleepy, but having sleep induced upon you. So our Gassy Caddy is talking about his flock of sleepy kids, the orphans in the play care that he's putting to sleep. But the play care has been abandoned for years. There aren't kids there anymore that can serve as his sleepy flock, right? Wrong. The whole point of the play care and the poppy gas was to help convert them into toys. But rather than them all being giant toys like Huggy Wuggy, I suspect a lot of these kids turned out much smaller. When the team and I were playing through Project Playtime's newest update, we noticed this poster.
What does this say?
Take every
step.
Take every step like it's your last.
Oh, and then heading to Playcat. Yeah, it's a bunch of random characters, so these are kids, not like toys.
A poster with 3 new plush toys walking towards the play care. Now, at the time, I just thought that these toys were there to represent the children walking to the play care, trying to make things seem wholesome and child-friendly. But now, I don't think that these were representations at all. I've already mentioned the sad-looking images of the children on the walls of the play care, but did you notice the remains of characters next to their faces on the edges of the frame? These are the same characters. A dog, unicorn. There's also a new character there that wasn't on the poster, a green bunny. If you look at a later drawing from one of the children in the trailer, we see a plush with floppy green ears and the words, my new friend. This kid became his friendly green bunny, and I suspect that the other children all had similar fates, becoming the very mascots of Playcare. This is the sleepy flock that Gassy is talking about, a group of converted children that are lost and scared and see him as their only savior. But then, who is this angel of salvation that Gassy Caddy's talking about here? Well, the last 2 wall scratchings give us that answer pretty explicitly. The original Save Me, I rejoice in him, and never forget the Hour of Joy. In our last theory, we suspected the Hour of Joy was the moment that the toys revolted and reclaimed the factory. In one of the analog horror tapes released on the Mob Games YouTube channel, we see the Hour of Joy is at hand written on one of the walls right before we hear screams of the factory workers. Screams that match the ones we hear on the scientist's VHS tape from Chapter 1.
Those still missing. These events are no doubt in relation to him. He's
absence was a flaw in the scientific process.
It's the prototype, 1006, one we believe was created from the man who wanted to bring joy to children, Elliot Ludwig. He was the first successful toy from the Bare Bodies Initiative. He was the original that led to the creation of all the others. And we actually get our
What did I
very
do?
first look
I
at
think.
these trailers. This massive robotic amalgamation made from various other toy parts. You got things like a huggy head near the top, and there, right there, there's Mommy's top half. This is what the prototype's working on. This is what Mommy meant by make me a part of him. And my suspicion is that this is what Gassy and his somniferous flock are helping build. Any cult needs themselves a goal, something that helps the leader to become more powerful. And gathering parts of dead toys, maybe even killing other toys themselves in order to build a monstrous body, yeah, that one seems to fit the bill. And if any of them die along the way, well, then they're just martyrs for the cause. In the opening shot of Huggy's headless body, there's actually a dog plushie similar to the dog that we've seen in the posters, also missing a head. If you die or fall victim in your mission, you don't die in vain, you get the privilege of becoming part of the Savior. But did you notice something missing in this 1006 amalgamation? His spindly arm and long thin fingers that we see from the end of chapter 2. That critical missing piece in this silhouette makes me think that this isn't his body. Or at least I don't think it's his body yet. Notice how still the silhouette is. Well, that could certainly be there for dramatic effect. I actually think it's because this body is a work in progress. The candles around the plate care give off a ritualistic vibe, and that, combined with the missing iconic arm, makes me think that maybe 1006 Gassy and his flock are gathering these materials to build him the perfect body, and that they still need to put his soul into that body. And so chapter 3 is going to be about us stopping it, stopping the somniferous flock from finishing the job, so that maybe finally we can be a hero in this game. Maybe. But I don't think so. You see, thus far, we've been nothing but the villain. It's been well established at this point that we used to work here. And not only did we work here, we were instrumental in the creation of some of these toys.
I wonder who we are. But why? You should know. It was your doing that made us... Oh, we said that!
They left Mom to die alone. Mommy didn't deserve that, but you worked here. So if anyone deserves to die alone, it's you.
And now, look at what we've done since coming back to the factory. We've killed both Huggy Wuggy and Mommy Longlegs, two toys that were made from kids. It's not a great track record for our player character, right? Currently, there's a Poppy ARG taking place in the lead up to Chapter 3, and while there isn't enough information yet to fully solve it, there are aspects that have been discovered that shine a light on the children involved in the play care scheme. One of the discoveries was this incident report about one of the orphans in play care, Marie Payne. Now, if the name Marie Payne sounds familiar, well, it's because we found a transfer request in Chapter 2 about her. In that request, we were told that she was the child who would go on to become Mommy Longlegs. Now, why do I bring that up? Well, if you remember, Mommy was fine with the orphans because she never wanted them to feel alone like she did. She was protective of the kids. You know, the only people that Mommy Longlegs lashed out at were the staff, the people who tortured her and transformed her into a giant neon pink toy. She knew what they were going to be doing to these kids because it had all been done to her first. She was trying to be a protector in comfort. We also know that she doesn't trust the prototype or any of his religious rhetoric. This is especially important if the prototype is indeed Elliot Ludwig, founder of Playtime, the man who started the whole toy conversion process in the first place. She doesn't buy his liberation of toy shtick one bit. She knows that he's once again trying to use the people around him for his own selfish gains. In fact, a group of toys building a big body using the parts of other living creatures, it's the Bigger Bodies Initiative all over again, but this time for the prototype. All of these clues together make me curious about what our motivations are for being here. Are we actually here to help, or are we just cleaning up the mess of evidence that we left behind? Or if we on the side of the orphans, unwillingly turned into monsters, are we gonna end up siding with Elliot all over again, a man who created a nightmare for so many? Early signs aren't exactly promising. We stripped Mommy of her freedom and independence only to feed her to the prototype. So what do you think is gonna happen next with these kids from play care? It seems like there's no route where we don't walk away with some blood on our hands. Though, something tells me that's something our player character is more than familiar with. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying theories about brightly colored mascots, I highly recommend you check out our coverage of Welcome Home. If you like Poppy, you are gonna love this mystery ARG website. Or maybe you're in the mood for a horror game that isn't about dead kids being turned into monsters. Sounds impossible, but if you check out our theory on My Friendly Neighborhood, you might be pleasantly surprised. As always, my friends, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all next week.
transcription subject, Captain Calcium, Crocodile. That conniving criminal had a chance. It didn't matter that humans were capable of empathy when it was a selective concept that could be turned off like a light switch. What a curse to be given the gift of sapience, yet to have such an atrocious form. The hideous monster sprang forward. Its unrivaled endurance meant that its bloodlust would never be sated. Any compassion was overridden by an instinct much stronger. That was what their history told us would happen all along. The Federation needed to kill as many humans as possible, but I had forgotten that. Its clawless fingers pressed into my throat, and all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. "I'm going to kill you!" I shrieked, snapping upright. "Savages!" My head spun, and I realized I was in a ventilated building. The cool metal beneath my spine suggested I was on some sort of operating table. At least, I hoped that was what the tiny knives were for. My wing was bound in some sort of plaster, and gauze was wrapped around my aching neck. This must be somewhere amidst the predator-infested lands of Earth. The realization that it was a dream provided immeasurable relief. Thinking about the details, it was a senseless nightmare. Social hunters wouldn't wander and pick us off alone. Still, I couldn't help feeling uneasy at that peak of the future. It was tough to picture the human kid devolving and encroaching on Federation worlds with his brethren. I slid my talons off the table, clicking around on wobbly feet. Why had Argent's father listened to its son's plea to spare me? Weren't the primates furious about the cities we destroyed? Argent didn't deserve to suffer, but maybe I should have put him down. If I knew humans were such brutal hunters, their compassion wouldn't have swayed me. Those drawn-out methods are far worse than the Arxes. With a bit of hesitancy, I tested the door handle. It was unlocked. The humans kept their structures more sanitary than I expected, from creatures accustomed to constant blood and death. There wasn't any reek of predation or biological markers left to intimidate me. Perhaps the Terrans realized I showed mercy to their kind, and stayed their hand. They were a cogent species, not the non-sapient terror I saw in my nightmare. Still, I felt like I should be bound or caged. Maybe the primates were testing whether I could be enslaved. That was the only reason I could fathom why they'd patched me up. Thoughts of Thion, the only surviving member of my party, raced through my mind. It begged the question of how long I'd been out, and whether that Marcus faction had sniped him. As I turned into a wider area, a gun was jabbed inches from my face. An adult human watched with a neutral expression, but I could see the hunger that lurked in those pupils. The alien predator looked like the result of a disastrous lab experiment, with its exposed face and glistening skin. I felt sorry for the prey races like the snake that had to deal with these things marching around.
What was that noise? You're going to kill me.
Its eyes glowed in the middling light, and its dry lips tensed. That must be a cue that it wanted blood to wet them.
I encourage you to try, bird.
I squeezed my eyes shut. Nightmare. There's no point to killing you now. We failed.
Calcium thinks we're going to conquer them, Dad.
Argent offered from atop a footstool.
Well, I don't think we'll have the chance, kiddo. The Greys beat us to the punch. Well, so I hear.
Sullenness clasped my heart as I thought of the undefended Nishtal. The Arxa wouldn't pass up a golden opportunity if it was brought to their attention. There hadn't been time to dwell on the reptiles' arrival at Earth, but it told us a lot about the humans. The fact that the Terrans were a feeling people who cared for each other hadn't stopped them from jumping in bed with their antithesis. You are dangerous, but still, I have shown you mercy time and again. My home is gone. Do what you think you must, human, I grumbled. The father peeled back its plump lip.
The name's Manoj. You have a sick ideal of mercy,
Where'd the
but
paint
my
go?
son is alive because of you. That's the only reason I'm not ending you myself. Got it?
I see. It is difficult to look a sapient in the eye and kill it, Manoj, even for one of your spawn. What happens to me doesn't matter. I won't resist the execution squad.
Come on. Resist a little. I got wildlife doctors to treat you and your pal with some reluctance. They gave in eventually on the condition that I turn you over to UN forces once you're stable.
Wait, my pal.
Argent told me where to find him. Pure genius hiding spot. Look under the bedsheet behind me.
The full-grown human was positioned just right to obstruct my vision. On closer inspection, the tubes and wires behind the Predator were attached to the far Sol officer. Horror coursed through my veins. Thyon was missing an arm. The jagged edges around his shoulder.
Oh, honey. Honey bunny. Okay. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Hi, honey. It's only 11. Can you go in your chair for an hour? Can you go in your chair for an hour? Okay, I'm coming. I feel the pause. Come here. Okay, there you are. Come here. Come here. You just pawed at me, so come here. Come here. Hello. We're just taking a quick little kitty break because somebody needs attention, but only, if I'm not doing anything like giving them attention. Come here, you little bastard. Come on. Oopsie. There we go. Yeah, we're just taking a 5-minute kitty break because this guy, he's got his food, he's got his catio open. I'm gonna pick his nose to get the boogies out of there. I don't know how this indoor cat is so goddamn dirty all the time. Alright.
Tubes and wires behind the Predator were attached to the far Sol officer. Horror coursed through my veins. Thyon was missing an arm. The jagged edges around his shoulder stump suggested teeth had sawed it off. Manoj must have gotten too hungry around the injured officer and experienced a lapse in its control. I know it must be tough for a predator to stitch together a wounded prey animal who was in a coma. But my gosh. It's Thyon! I checked both of my wings in a squawking panic. The human scalpels could have shaved off tiny flesh bits in fractions that I hadn't noticed. You're just like the Axa, Manoj snorted.
Damn, you're a fucking idiot. Human teeth aren't big enough. Certainly not to do that so cleanly.
That? Yes. You're right, Predator. Then you fed him to the tigers, I suppose.
Actually, it was leopards that got him. Same family as tigers, but with spots instead of stripes. Would have had nothing left but crumbs, except that I showed up when it was picking at him. Arjun was upset about it, else I would have let nature run its course.
You're lying. We placed him in a tree. There's no way land predators could have gotten to him. Manoj pulled up a clip on its holopad with a snarl born of cruel amusement. The human set the device down on a table, and I leaned over it hesitantly. A massive beast with a mottled pelt was walking up a vertical trunk, defying gravity with ease. Sinister forepaws hugged the bark's circumference, while its hind legs moved like it was ascending ladder rungs. The predator's speed quickened without warning, and its hind legs pushed off. It leapt onto a branch in an adjacent tree faster than any landwalker should be able to. I suppose these leopards were more than capable of scaling greenery in a blink. The only reason I could conjure why the Terrans kept such a beast alive was their arboreal roots. That aerial terrorization might be relatable to them. Manoj had shown me that they were quite willing to scale forest trunks themselves. The tiger reserve makes sense now. The humans respect this family of animals because they recognize the bestial common ground. The adult predator leaned back.
So, we reduced the drugs, keeping Thyon in a medically induced coma. He's already starting to stir. This should be good.
I assumed you would want revenge, Manoj. And I know it's just how humans are. But
No.
please, take it out on me.
Okay.
I gave the orders. I deserve your wrath. All Thyon wanted was to stop predators from hitting any more worlds.
Alright, are you done now?
Sleep at night, Knowing
Can I
there
go
was
back to
another
work?
answer out there.
I love
We're
you.
not the answer.
Nobody understands that but me. I always saw your redemptive qualities
There.
and how unique humans were.
Yes, yes.
I
Lay
wish
in
that
your
was
chair.
enough. We both know coexistence
back to
isn't
work.
an option. I'm sorry that it had to be like this.
It didn't have to be like this at all. We wanted peace, to fight alongside you, and you committed genocide against us for it.
I wonder if there could have been another way. Human conquest is as inevitable as your growth. There are no future generations for any other race with you alive. The human scowl was growing more visceral by the second. I wondered if it was reconsidering its promise to Argent to spare me. My exterminator training faltered as its narrowed eyes bore into my skull. A fearful squawk bubbled in my throat, but I fought to ground myself. Beneath its anger, pain manifested in its increasingly hostile posture. The skin of its hands was tight around the bone knobs, which suggested waning control. My thoughts wandered to how Arjun had appealed to my morality and claimed Terran religions called for natural compassion. I reminded myself that those emotions were genuine. They didn't just disappear at adulthood. This father, monstrous as it was, resisted murderous urges in favor of its bond with its son. Perhaps if I appealed to that side and continued to treat this ghastly beast with dignity, I could save Thion. Extermination officer is a dangerous job where you're always on call. Not good for settling down. So I never had kids. Discovered. I have killed a lot more living beings than I like to recall. But I have to believe that somewhere, for how we slowed Earth's expansion, there's a hatchling who will live to adulthood. A low rumble emanated from Manoj.
There's millions of children on both worlds who are dead right now because you tried to kill us. All for our eye placement.
Human, your eye placement is a symptom of a bigger problem. Predators do have forward-facing eyes, but it's much deeper than that. That's like saying a virus must be eradicated for its spike proteins. Its actions, the infection and spread, are the issue. The adult human adjusted a rectangular object, which appeared to be a video camera. A red light blazed in the lens, and I guessed I was being recorded. That was a sensible action for intelligence purposes. Manoj bared its yellowed teeth, approaching me with shuffling steps. It traced an oily finger across my beak with a chuckle, before pointing my nose toward the camera.
Say hello to the people of planet Earth.
The predator sneered.
You're being broadcast to social media right now, whenever the internet still functions. Look, the eventual millions who'll see this in the eye and repeat your little virus line.
I squeezed my eyes shut. You're angry. I don't hate humans for what they are. It wasn't personal. It's just the reality of the situation.
It should have felt personal, Drumstick. I happened to find footage floating around from the UN's raids. A Crocodile transmission sent to a downed ship. Those pink markings on this fella's beak look awful similar to yours, don't they?
The Terran pulled up another video on its holopad. I recognized my own visage on the feed. An allied ship must have intercepted the hail we sent to the downed human who had shown us a picture of its family. Pity swelled in my throat as I thought of the offspring in its image. Those three primates had looked younger than Arjun, and now were left without a parent. For all I knew, they died in the bombings, and that UN pilot had sacrificed itself in vain. Surrender yourself to our custody, peacefully, and I'll see that you survive. The cadence of my voice was overlaid by static interference. You can ensure that your culture is remembered. Manoj offered a chilling grin, its alien features giving off contradicting signals.
That's your mercy, Calcium. A perfect view of the destruction of your planet, your culture, and everyone you cared about. Meanwhile, you're a prisoner among people who want your kind exterminated forever. An exhibit in a twisted museum.
I wanted someone to study our culture. I wanted you to be remembered.
Fuck you. We could execute you, and that decision won't be up to me. But my suggestion let's give him the same mercy he offered one of ours. Let him witness the destruction of Nishtal in HD while they keep him locked up to document Crocodile culture.
My eyes shifted to the floor. There was never such an undercurrent of cruelty in my offerings. I had been trying to minimize their suffering, while Manoj aimed to twist the knife. Krakotl culture was well documented by every Federation race, so it was not in jeopardy of vanishing from the records. There was no point to that existence. The humans viewing this video would demand a more violent end for me, wouldn't they? A mortar revved outside the compound, and predatory shouts rippled through the air. Those must be the UN soldiers picking me up. I shot a final glance at Arjun, who was watching me with interest. The human kid raised a clawless hand as we locked eyes. Perhaps this was some gesture of farewell, like the tail signals of many species. The foresight of Arjun as a human adult floated through my mind again. I doubted I would ever see him again, but if I did, he would be something unrecognizable. These creatures grew out of the tolerable phase much too quick. Fighting off tears, I lifted my uninjured wing at him. The explosive noise of a door flying off its hinges pierced the air. Terrence couldn't do anything.
Put your hands up, wings over your head.
Predator, I whispered. Don't go scaring any more snakes. Dark fabric enveloped my head before I knew what was happening.
Oh, I hate painting yellow.
Coursed through my veins at the sheer number of humans I sensed around me. This was the largest concentration of predators I dealt with in my life. Part of me hoped that they would take me as a meal, instead of skewing my mercy into a revenge fantasy.
He can dish it out, but he sure as fuck can't take it, and I want him dead. I don't care. I hate characters like that. Ugh. And I'm all for, like, you know, the redemption arc. Yeah, I love the redemption arc, but there's some lines you can't cross, and bombing Earth is one of them.
Mr. Beast is suing himself. Kinda. You see, earlier this month, the news came out that Jimmy Beast, everyone's favorite AI-generated thumbnail face, was finally sued against his fast food brand, Mr. Beast Burger. Or more accurately, the company responsible for managing that brand, Virtual Dining Concepts, VDC for short. Why would he do that? Well, as the lawsuit claims, it was the result of years of bad burgers battering his beastly beef brand. The quality of the food that was being produced by VDC's army of restaurants was inconsistent and in many cases dangerous, resulting in a rapid erosion of Mr. Beast's food brand. So how did VDC respond? By pulling out the Uno reverse card, counter-suing Mr. Beast for damage to their brand. Basically, they're saying that Mr. Beast's public statements about VDC actually caused significant damage to their bottom line. How much are we talking about here? Oh, you know, just a cool $100 million. How's that for a thumbnail? Last to leave the courtroom wins 9 figures. So who's right and who's wrong? The answer to that, my friends, is so much bigger than either of these two companies. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show that dishes out the truth behind all your favorite brands. So, back in 2020, Mr. Beast, ever the trend spotter, had this brilliant idea, partnering with Ghost Kitchens to quickly scale up a food brand with his name on it. Now, that right there is already a lot to process, so let's just make sure we're all on the same page. Basically, a Ghost Kitchen is not Casper and his pals dishing up a load of baked ziti. It's a professional kitchen that works to make food for another brand. You know how ghostwriters are people whose job it is to write books in secret for someone else? Well, Ghost Kitchen is basically that for food. It's a group of chefs working in a kitchen to cook up food for a restaurant that does not physically exist. The restaurant's name and menu appear on food delivery apps like Grubhub and DoorDash. People place their orders, and then an existing kitchen somewhere out there in the world decides to cook it up. Sometimes those kitchens are, you know, actual kitchens in already established restaurants just looking to pick up a few extra tabs for extra business on the side. But oftentimes those ghost kitchens are working solely for the virtual brands in unusual places, in shipping containers, in parking lots, in places where you wouldn't expect your food to be coming from. It's weird, sure, but hey, food trucks are a thing. And on the surface, it seems to be a perfectly acceptable business model. Mr. Beast uses his reach to spotlight a menu of items he's approved, and then local chefs make it. That allows him to have hundreds of restaurant locations all over the country overnight, while giving extra work to chefs and other employees struggling to stay afloat. Jimmy is the marketing, Virtual Dining Concepts is the actual business making the food. On paper, it really should be a win-win-win, and financially, it certainly seemed to be, with Jimmy tweeting out in July of 2022 that Mr. Beast Burger had earned $100 million in revenue. But in reality, things aren't nearly so rosy. Ever since day one of Mr. Beast Burger's launch in 2020, there's been contention between Jimmy and Virtual Dining Concepts about burger quality control. Burgers coming out underdone, overcooked, underseasoned, with air in them. Ooh, when When you're relying on over 1,000 different kitchens with a vast range of ingredients and staff training at their disposal, the product is never going to be the same. For example, compare Matt Stoney's video.
Oh, dude, look at all that beef, look at all that cheese. 4 smashed crispy beef patties.
To what Eddie Burbank got.
This tastes like a cafeteria burger.
I mean, the difference is obvious. This burger patty does not look like this burger patty. And this is something that's openly acknowledged by Jimmy's own team, as seen here in a clip of his manager Reed reacting to the opening of Mr. Beast Burger's physical location.
I mean, this is the problem with delivery is, we have 1,700 virtual locations, and depending on where you order from, the burger experience might be different because you're getting it from a different restaurant, you're getting it from a delivery service, which is really hard to control. Is it going to take 20 minutes? Is it going to take 40 minutes? You don't know. And then sometimes you're relying on what does the restaurant have left. Maybe they don't have that specific potato bun that's being used. Maybe they have something else. And so this was the first time people were getting a amazing hamburger actually delivered to them sitting in a restaurant for the first time, and the consistency of the product is just it's different when you can own it and it's your restaurant.
But this year, the quality control issue finally came to a head. In May of 2023, the original video promoting the launch of the brand was made private. And when someone asked if this was a sign that Mr. Beast Burger was done, Jimmy responded saying that the problem was that he couldn't guarantee the quality of the order. This is also something he repeated in July. He made out to the tweet when responding to a fan's complaint about their subpar Beast Burger. Quote, "Sadly, I can't get out of my deal with Beast Burger." He elaborated in a series of follow-ups about how the original intent of Beast Burger was to help restaurants make more money during the pandemic, but eventually it just became impossible to keep up quality working with restaurants that he doesn't own. When asked if this meant that he was retiring the brand, he said he would if he could, and the company he partnered with, VDC, wouldn't let him stop, even though it was terrible for his brand. He acknowledged that a younger him had just signed himself into a bad deal, which leads us then to today, with Jimmy filing a lawsuit against VDC to make this contract with them should be null and void because they failed to uphold their part of the bargain. The kitchens under their management were sending out food that was, according to some of the fans who ordered it, revolting, disgusting, inedible, and likely the worst burger they ever had. Which, is saying a lot when Burger King's Barbie Burger is a product that exists. Looks like it's been slathered in Pepto-Bismol. But here's where things really get spicy. VDC responded with a lawsuit of their own. According to them, Jimmy was right. Mr. Beast Burger's reputation was destroyed, but it wasn't by them delivering mistaken orders. It was rather by Jimmy himself airing the dirty laundry publicly, retweeting and elevating the relatively few instances of people's dissatisfaction with the food, publicly complaining about not being able to get out of his contract. They claimed that he was engaging in a cash grab, trying to bully the company for his own monetary gain. And the damage done to their business, not just Mr. Beast Burger, but Virtual Dining Concepts' complete brand of ghost kitchens, totaled over $100 million. So
Introducing our PC Black Label frozen pizza, hand-tossed in Italy for a crisp, airy crust. Shop now.
Find Your Stride is a charitable initiative by winners that helps vulnerable women move forward. From providing means to providing opportunities, you can help women move into a better place. Donate today at your local winners or online at findyourstride.ca.
So with lawsuits flying around in both directions, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, who's right here? Now, at first glance, Jimmy's case seems like it should be obvious. The biggest problem hurting the image of Mr. Beast Burger was the huge amount of complaints they got about their food. Any damage that Jimmy allegedly did to the brand by responding to or bringing attention to negative reviews, all of that happened only because VDC failed to uphold their end of the bargain. Actually making safe, high-quality food. If there was no bad food, you would have no bad tweets, right? Except there's likely a number of angles that VDC will attack that premise from. The first would be the relative scale of complaints. In the food world, there's always going to be negative reviews of a product, and that Mr. Beast, in responding to a small handful of them, made a mountain out of a molehill, overblowing a quality control issue that, relative to the volume of orders being placed, wasn't nearly as bad as it seemed. The second angle they'll likely be arguing was that it was never their job to provide consistent food. It was only their job to provide food that had the Mr. Beast name on it. That one's a little bit weird, we'll get to it. So let's take a big old bite and chew on some of the issues that are brought forth by this legal battle, shall we? And remember, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. It's just me nerding out about the future of how food gets distributed. First, to address the idea that Mr. Beast overly fixated on the few bad reviews that Mr. Beast Burger received versus the mountain of orders that VDC fulfilled, we need to understand the average number of complaints and health violations a typical restaurant receives. A study by the National Restaurant Association found that about 7% of restaurants had critical violations, which are the most serious type of infraction for a food service provider. Critical violations are things that would include anything causing an immediate health problem for customers or employees. Stuff like cross-contamination of bacteria, raw meat being stored at improper temperatures, sewage backups, and a lack of running water to wash your hands. estimate and compare with other very similar service providers. We know for a fact that Virtual Dining Concepts has delivered 6 million orders based on the header on their site. And while not all of those are going to come from Jimmy's brand, we can assume that most of them are. Let's just say that Mariah Carey's cookies and Mario Lopez's tortas, yeah, they're probably not flying off the shelf as quickly as the burgers produced by the guy actively promoting his sandwiches to his hundreds of millions of followers and then regularly giving away wads of cash to random orders. There might be a little bit more enthusiasm by one of those versus the others. We also know, thanks to this quote from March of 2021 from Robert Earl, founder of VDC, that 1 million burgers at that point had been sold. Quote, we've done 1 million entrees already. It got so much attention. He's a wonderful partner. He's intent on building with us a big, permanent brand. Whoops. Yeah, that one didn't age too well, did it? Anyway, for the sake of argument, let's just do a real lowball here and say only 1 million orders have been placed for Beast Burger. So what's the relative volume that we're dealing with here? Well, according to the Mr. Beast complaint, the brand has received thousands of negative reviews. So let's take a high number of complaints, say 10,000, versus a low number of orders, say 1 million. That then gives us only 1% complaining about the quality of the Mr. Beast Burger, well below the 7% of restaurants with critical violations. Now, obviously, this isn't a perfect comparison. Getting a bad review online is very different from having a health code violation, but it does show that there may be something to Jimmy looking a bit too closely at all the negative tweets. 1% negative reviews across 1 million or more orders, that's a great hit rate. Or maybe not. So let's look at the question another way. While we don't have specific numbers about Virtual Dining Concepts themselves, there has been a bunch of data released about other similar ghost kitchen service providers. Reef Kitchens is a company with a similar concept. A ghost kitchen company that operates delivery-only virtual restaurants. In 2021, an investigation into the company found that out of the 61 Reef Kitchens operating and inspected in Florida, 58 violated at least one health and safety concern. Of those, 21 separate kitchens had themselves a high-level safety violation, ranging from a lack of soap for proper hand washing of the chefs to storing meat at dangerously high temperatures. 2 units even had sewage leaking into the kitchen. So overall, a third of Reef's operations in Florida had a high-level violation. 33%. Way higher than the national average that we talked about before.
Of course, it's Florida. It's not Florida, it's Texas.
Out of non-traditional spaces like parking lots and shipping containers.
If it's not either of those, it's usually Russia.
Mix of both non-traditional spaces and pre-established restaurant kitchens. So maybe BDC's handling of other brands is better? Nope, doesn't seem like it. And found a similar trend to Mr. Beast Burger. Negative reviews on account of incorrect orders, late deliveries, and food just being bad. DJ Khaled's Another Wing boasts a 3-star average on Grubhub. Steve Aoki's Pizza Aoki reviews don't fare much better. Food was late, cold, gross. Even actual chef Guy Fieri decided to partner with VDC to bring his Flavortown kitchen to the virtual world.
We work with inside of restaurants in over 25 cities around the country where we build a virtual kitchen in that restaurant.
Within a few months, the brand expanded to 160 locations. Guy Fieri was a jewel in the VDC crown because he was a real chef giving real legitimacy to the business. But look at the VDC website now. The brand is gone. Searching the Flavortown kitchen across food delivery apps completely vanished. The only remnants are its various 1-star reviews on Yelp with a very similar refrain. I trusted the brand, big mistake. The chicken guy sandwich I ate was not edible.
The impression I'm getting is that
Shit.
there's a lot more stuff included in this that's not on the menu.
Even Guy Fieri, experienced restaurateur, is struggling to find critical success with virtual kitchens. He bounced before his brand really suffered, just like Jimmy is looking to do now, but doesn't really seem able to do contractually. So really, it seems like Jimmy is in the right. He and many others have had their brands actively co-opted and weakened by these ghost kitchens operating irresponsibly. But unlike many other celebrities, doesn't seem like he's able to extract himself from the contract. So let's just talk about those contracts for a second, shall we? Because that actually brings up the second major issue with the case. Obviously, quality control is a huge problem, not just with VDC, but for the entire ghost kitchen industry. Decentralized model and don't actively own any restaurants yourself, there's no real accountability there. If you're working in a Buca di Beppo, but you occasionally get a delivery order to Guy Fieri's Flavortown kitchen, if that order sucks, it's not really coming back to you. There's no true way to hold you, the worker at Buca di Beppo, accountable. It's not your primary job after all. The health of the actual main business is always going to have to come first. Let's be honest, it's not like you were trained to do the menu items correctly anyway. Heck, probably didn't even have the right ingredients to make that item. You're just doing your best to replicate that one dish from that one fake menu amongst the hundreds of restaurants that may be operating out of your kitchen.
I found 10 restaurants running out of the same kitchen. Does that sound like a lot of kitchens to you? Because if it doesn't, I lie. There are 44 restaurants on Uber Eats that all share this one address.
So overall, there's not really a high likelihood of you getting that item right, nor is there much incentive to put in any extra effort. That is why these orders keep failing so hard. But then, why isn't BDC themselves holding these restaurants accountable? Contractually, they might not have to. Now, while I wasn't able to get a hold of a contract for virtual dining concepts, I was able to find one for a similar company, Virtual Dining Brands. And let me just say, the services they promise to provide are pretty simple, to say the least. Here's the contract language they have in there. Quote, virtual dining is a business engaged in the development, promotion, advertising, and sale of restaurant-prepared food through a delivery application. For the purposes set forth, licensing products should include mutually approved menu items for app-based delivery. That's it. No quality control, no minimum standard, no consistent recipe. Just did we get food items branded with your name out of some Uber Eats menus? And if VDC's contract reads anything like that one, technically by the letter of the contract, they've done their job for Mr. Beast. No, that's insane. But that's also one potential danger of licensing out your brand. When a public figure licenses out their name or their likeness, you're basically given permission to another company to represent you out in the marketplace. They're using your intellectual property to produce or sell something. The nice thing about that is it's a quick way to scale up. Classic example of this in the YouTube space is with merch. Very few YouTubers are actively doing their own merch in-house. Instead, they're licensing their logos and catchphrases out to third parties in order to do that for them. That allows YouTubers to offer merch quickly without having to buy a bunch of equipment for themselves. It also lowers the overall financial risk for them because they're not having to hire a bunch of new employees to manage those workflows. And hey, you'll probably wind up with a better product than if you did it yourself anyway, because presumably you're working with people who know that space. Case in point, our new Theoryware, which just launched. There's some amazing products in the mix, like this incredible waterproof jacket with adjustable Velcro sleeves, this awesome vegan leather purple jacket, or this crisp white button-down with subtle circuit patterns around the neck. I could have done any of that on my own. Instead, we partnered with people who know how to make quality clothing. Their background is, believe it or not, in cutting-edge street fashion, and their expertise, plus our ideas, led to a really awesome collaboration, and a slate of new products that you can buy right now while supplies last via the link that you see on screen. However, the downside if you enter into a relationship like this is that if that provider winds up being shady, you're the one having to clean up the mess. If your licensing contract isn't strict or specific enough, and you're not keeping a close eye on the people who are using your brand, it's not them who are suffering, it's ultimately you that's left holding the bag. And I'm not talking about a cool bag like our new radioactive backpack available at Theoryware.com. That's why restaurants like In-N-Out and McDonald's retain a ton of oversight over who's allowed to open up new establishments under their name. For one thing, they don't take all comers. It takes a rigorous application process, and once you clear the bar, you're still not done. You're committing a minimum of 20 hours to a franchise training program that lasts anywhere between 6 to 18 months. And after you've completed your basic training, then it's off to Hamburger University, which is a very real thing where franchise owners take classes on everything from management and strategy to company culture. And what do you get out of all of that training? You give yourself a consistent experience. A Big Mac is going to taste the same no matter what city or neighborhood you order it in. But with VDC, that attention to detail just doesn't seem to be there. And there doesn't really seem to be the necessary penalties in place to keep them incentivized to doing a good job for their clients. And you see, that right there is the issue with the entire Ghost Kitchen model. Everything's decentralized. Not only do the mistakes pile up, but it becomes really easy to avoid responsibility. There's always someone else in the pipeline to blame. Always a layer of separation between you and the customer. VDC, in operating Mr. Beast Burger, got all the benefits of being a big brand. A huge number of customers signed up to buy food items from a name that they recognize. But apparently they weren't willing or equipped to bear the costs actually associated with delivering a consistent experience that would please the customer. Based on all their actions throughout this process, doesn't really look like they're contractually obligated to do it either. They just have to provide some food. Does any of this mean that the Ghost Kitchen model is inherently unworkable? No. At least I'm not willing to say that just yet. There may just come a company that has their own Hamburger University that'll provide actual training to standardize practices and quality, as well as give a clear line of accountability. It may just wind up being that the companies that manage and run the logistics of virtual kitchens also have to supply their own ingredients. But what does all of this mean for Mr. Beast now? Honestly, if I were to guess, I expect VDC to actually be able to keep the Beast brand for at least one more year. That Ghost Kitchen contract I mentioned earlier was for a 3-year license, and I expect the VDC to look pretty darn similar. I also suspect that they'll try really hard to hold on to Jimmy. Looking at the roster of their current clients, Jimmy is one of the only ones still on the site, making me think that the options there are limited. And without Guy Fieri, Jimmy is really the only jewel still left in their crown. To be honest though, I hope I'm wrong about this theory. I normally try to stay neutral with these sorts of episodes, but in this case, I gotta admit, I really feel bad for Jimmy in this sort of situation because I know how it sucks to have someone do a poor job with your brand, to try trust someone to do their job and then them to just utterly botch it, and how one bad contract can ultimately have ripple effects that affect your business for years. It sucks. But whatever the solution, one thing is clear. Right now, the food for VDC seems to be secondary to the business. And even though business may be booming, when the food gets neglected, everything implodes. Yes, that's what happens when you're on the bleeding edge. Bleeding, unsanitary, probably shouldn't be eating that edge. But hey, next time you do order from a virtual restaurant or a real restaurant, make sure you keep that receipt for today's sponsor, Fetch. If you don't know about this app yet, it's a personal favorite of mine, and you should buckle in, because it's a doozy. It's free, it's easy to use, and it earns you rewards on anything and everything that you buy, even if it's a completely inedible burger. And that anything isn't hyperbole. It really is on anything that you buy. So even if you
Looking for something else to watch for a minute. Sure, we'll try this one.
If you or a loved one is struggling with any kind of progressive hearing loss or persistent ear ringing, then you need to see this video. People from different parts of the globe are fixing their ear ringing just by following this simple morning routine. This
Investigation report of Human Action Plan B on reinforcement of 10-7. Interview transcript 03. Interview officer, IO. State your name and rank for the record. Subject, Vilmar Battlecast, Madame, 2nd Echelon Warrior. IO. Battlecast Madak, you were involved in the final assault on 10-7, correct? Subject, I was on the dropship alongside the first wave of humans when they first landed, yes. IO. Battlecast Madak, can you describe the human unit you and your warpod were attached to? Subject, be warned, sir. They are not what the entire galaxy had expected. IO. That is why I'm here. Vilmar Battlecast Madak knew warriors, and humans are no warriors. Madak was no stranger to combat and the beings who waged it, much like the rest of the galaxy's more war-focused sentients. It found humanity's offerings to the Confederation of Worlds to be underwhelming. He and his warpod of 64 strong, under the divine command of 4th Echelon Battle Priest Deton Apt, had completed 4 combat operations with minimal casualties. Most of his pod brethren beside him had been there since they had hatched many cycles ago. They were respectable people among the lower castes in Vilmar society, and viewed favourably by their betters for their unwavering service to the High Queen. Humans, however? Well, they are squishy for one. Their small stature speaks of weaker strength and their lack of disintegrated limbs into slower speed. They lack any sort of natural weapons, no claws or large teeth of any kind. How such a species has survived, let alone thrived through their death, what was beyond him? Subject. In hindsight, that should have been the first clue. Still, the humans should be commended for their bravery. No matter how foolish it was, involunteering to reinforce the flagging Confederation forces, locked in a losing battle for the Denver system, was a virtual death sentence. So the question was, what were the humans doing here with their rock throwers and useless, squishy bodies? When he pointed this out to his fellow pod brethren, it caused much amusement, as they cleared their glaive carbines, both eager and anxious for the coming battle. One of his pod brothers chortled and said, I heard something about that actually. It turns out the humans evolved from something called a pursuit predator. They would literally walk their prey to death. This brought about another bout of laughter. Madak knew warriors. So how foolish, he thought, for a warrior to fight by walking. Who are we? A creature of dark, angular metal snarled, perched atop the catwalk, while a Confederate task hang at bay. Its voice warped and distorted, hellish and evil. Drop troopers! Drop troopers! Made back the demonic horde. They're all slug throwers, fast into the air, in ravenous celebration of what is to come. And what do we do? The monstrous biped bent to the waist, bellowing down to his men. The venomous sneer heard even through his helmet's crackling microphone. Kill! 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 The terror demons pumped their fists in time with their chant, as if reciting some hellish prayer. Let's take them to church, hell jumpers! Hooah! The horde roared their refrain in perfect thunderous unison.
The human leader's armored fist clanged against his waist as he tilted his head back and let out a bone-chilling cackle surrounded by his horde of cheering killers. And Medak and his warpod standing, Reed cowering, with the rear of the hangar. Well, no one was laughing anymore. Drop? Troopers? Can you explain what those are? Subject. Before 10/7, I would tell you they were the criminally insane or societal outcasts quite literally ejected from their ships in low orbit, like refuse to die in the battlefield below. And what would you tell me now? Subject. I would tell you I was half right. This orbit jumper dropship was, now then decided, an affront to aerospace engineering. What kind of self-respecting sentient species would pack over 20 troops, soldiers to shoulder in a box clearly designed for half that number, strap on a few chemical engines, weld on a couple ancient bolt throwers, then send it hurtling down into a planet's atmosphere on purpose? Well, the humans, of course. All passengers be advised. We will be within range of the Galactic Power Space Defense Grid on 10/7 in T-5 minutes. The primitive vehicle lurched to the side as it hurtled towards the planet below. The small lamp stowed in the overhead racks rattled and lights flickered. The orbit jumper's engines rose to a howl, deafening even through Maldak's sealed helmet. Hey, Scarebear. One of the humans, Sergeant Morgan, according to the nameplate of his armor, called him over the air with comlink. You think those Siegebreaker warplanes of yours took out those planetary anti-air cannons? Vilmar Siegebreakers are among the best the Confederation of Worlds has to offer, human. If they cannot defeat those cannons your primitive weapons and missiles had little hope for... Wait. Medak cocked his helmet head. Did you just address me as... a Scarebear? Those casual, knuckle-cast types look like bipedal insectoid teddy bears. The human chuckled, even as the orbit jumper lurched again. Out of context, you're a fucking nightmare fuel. Medak could hear a snort over the channel. No offense. Chuckles from the rest of the human troopers trickled in over comms. Most amusing, Medak stated flatly. For flashy bone packets with delusions of grandeur. A pregnant pause. No offense. That, for some reason that was lost on the Vilmar, had the humans roaring in laughter. Especially Sergeant Morgan. Oh, so the teddy bear actually has teeth. Medak went to respond when the light split blood red. And everyone was throwing violently against their restraints. The pilot's voice cut through the engine's deafening roar, as its maneuvering thrusters kicked in hard. Incoming fire from the planet's surface. Everyone hang on to your butts, conducting evasive maneuvers. Bloody hell, Sergeant Morgan snarled, his harness creaking beneath the strength of his gloved fists. The Vilmar around them drooled in distress as the G-forces spiked, pressing them into their seats painfully, the air being crushed in their lungs. Hey, Scarebear, what the fuck? Medak stared at the human side in disbelief, shocked that he seemed relatively unaffected by the intense gravitational force pressing down upon them. I thought you said your Siegebreaker warpods were the best. Those fucking guns aren't taken out at all. We're all going to die! One of the Vilmar battle cars managed to wail through his compressed lungs. Over the comms, the entire human squad let out a collective groan. Quit your whining, you pansy, Sergeant Morgan explained, manipulating his helmet config. Helljumper actual, this is Helljumper 7-1. Our transports are under heavy plasma flag from the planet's surface. Helljumper 7-1, this is Helljumper actual, we're pretty fucking aware. Planetary scans just came in. Vilmar Siegebreaker forces appear to have been routed. Seems the broadcasters didn't even manage to land before they were blasted out of the air. Every trooper, human and Vilmar, was struck silent. Medak closed his eyes and leaned his head back against his seat. 640 of the Vilmar Monarchy's best, armed with some of the Confederation's most advanced stealth systems. They couldn't even touch the ground. What chance did 64 Vilmar and 100-something squishy humans in flying boxes have? It was over. Fuck it. Came a gruff sigh from Sergeant Morgan. Hey, boss man, you gonna make the call or should I? Morgan, fine. Just shut up and have you and your people pull up their big boy pants. The voice on the other end sighed. Execute plan B. Something in the air above the human drop trooper shifted. A weight that seemed to scratch at the back of Medak's neck, setting his fight or flight instincts alight. His fellow Vilmar leaned as far away from the human sitting beside them as their restraints would allow. Unease nipped at Medak's ears, sharp and gleeful. As if the squishy human sitting beside them had suddenly been replaced by uncaged predators. Hi-ho. What was plan B? Nothing in the official documents provided to the Confederation of Worlds War Council details such an outline. Subject. The plan was rejected by the Vilmar and other commanders involved in the initial planning phase. Too risky. a waste of resources and warriors. According to Battle Priest Detonac, who was at the meeting, he thought the humans' proposal to be an outrageous joke, a bit of lunacy on the humans' part. I.O. Well, was it? Subject. Oh, it absolutely was, but it worked. I.O. What happened next? Subject. What do you think? The Vilwald watched on in equal parts confusion and trepidation as the humans unharnessed and stood up. Their map boots anchored them to the floor onto the orbit jumper's evasive maneuvers as they gathered their equipment in a practiced, methodical manner. Madak spotted Sergeant Morgan, strapped firmly in an exoskirt reinforced by plates of camouflage composite, what appeared to be retro thrusters, march over to the orbit jumper's ramp controls. What do you think you are doing? Morgan looked back and passed the ramp silverlinks. Plan B. The ramp unsealed with a sucking groan, quickly drowned out by howling wind, as running stardust from the 10-Val star system's thin atmosphere spilled into the troop compartment, buffeting the Vilmar clinging to their restraints. Just outside the ramp crust, tinted void stretched out into infinity, and below them lay 10-Val 7, the massive planet's horizon line illuminated by the local star, peeking over the thick atmosphere. We are 18,000 clicks above the planet's surface. What exactly do you expect to do from here? Madak cried out over the screaming wind and snarl of the orbit jumper's engines. Off in the near distance, a pool of sickly green plasma finally burst into a massive cloud of death. Sergeant Morgan didn't even blink before he burst into laughter as the transport tumbled sideways to avoid the plasma ramp. 10-Val 7 spinning wildly outside of the ramp behind them. The Vilmar groaned in pain as they were thrown around their seats, and their bodies crushed beneath the intense high G-force maneuvers. Once they leveled out, Sergeant Morgan asked, "Scare Bear, has no one told you exactly why the humans have ever developed capital ships before?" Madak coughed, chest still heaving from the G-force pressure. No. In fact, no one else really knew either. Every time the humans' military representative was shown up to a Confederation meeting, they would either be disregarded, or, is more often the case, laughed out of the room like an impudent child, trying to join the adults as they talked. You very well may have your fancy stealth barges and warlocks and over-engineered, overcompensating battleships, Sergeant Morgan roared over the howling wind. We got our armored infantry, we got our orbit jumpers, we got our skybreaker railguns, we got our drop troopers. Hooah! Barked Sergeant Morgan's men and women, as they lined up in front of the door, bulky rifles in hand, and bloodless spilling out into the void. All your men mastered space combat centuries ago, Sergeant Morgan begged. It's just great, notable even overcomes. But ain't no one knows exoplanetary warfare like we do. Bewildered, Madak asked. 640 of our best could knock out those guns. What can just 100 of you hope to do? We do what we do best, Sergeant Morgan laughed, then turned to his troopers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, go take a walk. After action report of Human Action Plan B on reinforcement of 10-Val 7. Total Confederation forces, 768. Vilmar forces, 640. Vilmar slain, 598. Vilmar wounded, 42. Human forces, 128. Human slain, 2. Humans wounded, 34. Total Galactic Powers forces, 15,000. Estimate. GP troops slain, 3,531. Estimate. GP troops captured, 898. Gowron slain, 2,458. Estimate. Gowron captured, 1,226. Objectives. Disable 4 flight batteries on Northern Hemisphere. Pretty much the same. Partial success.
Alright, I think that's it for tonight.
Disable 4 flight batteries.
Wait for these to dry, and then I'll do more detail in the morning. You all have a good night. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have, a good night again. I think I'm repeating myself. Time to go.